Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. Before we get into this week's guest, I want to remind you to subscribe, to share these videos, and to let people know that we are hearing Catholic testimonies on this channel. This week's guest is David Kruse, who runs a fantastic shop. I'm going to let him talk about it. It's called Orémoose Leather Goods. And in fact, David, first of all, welcome.
Thanks,
Second of
Eddie.
all, I appreciate you being here live from Australia, which is pretty cool. Why don't you talk about your company?
Orémoose Catholic Leatherwork. Yeah, we started it in 2020. It was kind of a post. I was in seminary for a long time and basically got into making leather breviary covers for myself and the other seminarians, Bible covers and things. And in 2020, we launched it, and apparently there is a need for meaningful, durable, beautiful gifts, mainly. But our mission really is just to clothe the word. That's kind of our motto, clothing the word of God. We like to think of it as little tuxedos for the Bible, but the idea is just that, you get a nice leather Bible cover, and this is good quality leather. This is not the plasticky stuff that's 2% leather. This is from, in my opinion, the best tannery in the United States, and we make the covers basically to elevate the status of the Bible among other books.
Yep.
For people, that's really our mission, is to inspire people to read Scripture more, to revere it more, to have it not just sitting somewhere on a shelf or in a box somewhere, but somewhere central, right on the coffee table, right somewhere where it's respected and it's held in esteem. So the company's been in existence since 2020, and we've been growing steadily, and
Beautiful.
yeah, it's been a great
Beautiful.
project.
When you say durable, is this something that you imagine people passing it down to their children and their children's children? I don't know the length of products like that.
The longevity of an Orémoose Bible cover. I just sent an email to a guy the other day, and I said it should last you at least 400 years.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
I
That helps.
Yeah, the ancient books, from like the Middle Ages, like they're bound in leather, and the leather's the only thing that's not deteriorating much. So, and
That's
this is
fantastic.
kind of leather, so we're
That's
pretty confident.
That's
So,
great. Well, cool. Let's go to the beginning. How did this start? Because here we are, we're just talking about this fantastic company. How did everything come together to get you to that point? And can you talk about your faith in general, faith journey?
sure, yeah, yeah. For me, it started. I grew up in southern Minnesota. My family, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and my parents, I would say, were pretty into their faith. It was certainly a conversation that happened a lot. But there were really a few different elements in my life really 3 elements in my life that have been sort of the lanes. One of them is my family. My family, when I was real young, it was very healthy and vibrant. And as the youngest, you kind of see the tail end of everything, right? You grew up seeing your older siblings moving out and the house getting emptier and emptier. And as that happened for me, my parents struggled with their marriage more and more, and a lot of different factors, family factors, things in our life, financial factors, all kinds of stuff really started to go downhill. And so by the time I was in high school, I was basically an only child. Not really. I mean, my siblings were around, but they were all off getting married, going to college, things like that. And I was at home with mom and dad, and it was a very, very tough time. But the other aspect of my life was my art. I started. My dad was a painter, and both my parents, loved music, and just were really, really keen to bring about art and creativity in our household. So it was a high priority for us. There's 3 girls and 3 boys, and I'm the youngest, and I think all 5 of them at one point or another had been very much into art, and a number of them made it part of their career. But so art and music were a big part of my life as well. And then the faith aspect was huge, and so I had, growing up, we had this conglomeration of all these different things, right? We had this family situation going on. We had this art situation going on. And we had this faith situation going on. And for me, it was just, it was a constant kind of ping ponging between those three things. I in many ways used my art and my music to escape. Very early on, I was just very ambitious. Even when I was a really, really little kid, I was very, very ambitious. I remember there was a time that my mom said, I'll give you a nickel for every dandelion that you pull out of the, out of the front yard. And we had this huge front yard, and my little, 5-year-old entrepreneur brain ran outside and sat out there for like 9 hours and pulled up dandelions. And I brought 8, garbage bags full of dandelions, and she had to, cough up like $60 for me. But
Oh my gosh. Not bad for 9 hours of work. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this drive to go to the extreme has always been a part of my life. And for me, I think growing up, I was about 11 when things started to get rocky with my parents, and I was about 13, 14 when I started getting into drugs and drinking and all these different things, and things started to really spiral. But the one thing that I was holding on to was music, really. I do artwork as well, but music was really what I went to escape, what I went to to express what needed to come out.
What kind of music? Because the last few interviews have just been talking about, one of the gentlemen I just interviewed talked about punk rock, and the other guy was death metal. Was there a genre of choice in that period when you're kind of, like you said, kind of escaping?
Yeah, I would say for me, it was everything but heavy metal, hip hop, and country. Literally, it was everything. I played saxophone, so I played a lot of jazz. But I played guitar. I mean, I loved, Blink 182. I loved Fish. I loved Dave Matthews Band. Just anything. I'm listening to Dave Brubeck. I love classical music. Listen to some heavy stuff. I loved Led Zeppelin and all the oldies, all the classic rock stuff. But
Sure.
yeah, pretty much anything I could get my hands on. If it was good, it was good.
And was like the drinking and drugs, was that like around peers? Like, was this happening at school, or where were you? Yeah.
Yeah, it was at school. It was a big part of, unfortunately, the school I went to. It was pretty common, and it was just just the culture at the time. This would have been 2004, 2003, 2004 to 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And just at that time, I at least from my experience, that was the norm. You go to a party and you get a few different drugs you can do, and as much booze as you can handle, and that was the norm at the time. And yeah, I remember asking my parents if I could drop out of high school because I had at least enough self-awareness at one point to realize that I just needed to get out of that scene. I needed to get away from people my age, and because it was pulling me back into that. It felt like every time I took a vacation or had a summer break, I remembered who I am and could get a good fresh perspective on how my life was changing for the worse. But I don't know if dropping out of high school necessarily would have cured that, but I certainly felt that way at the time. Yeah.
So you didn't, and what changed? Was it after high school? I mean, I'm assuming you were off to college at that point, or
No, no, I didn't go to college. Yeah, basically what happened, and that's a big part of my conversion was, through high school, because gosh, it's like when you're part of a family and when you're at least even remotely engaged in your faith,
Hmm.
you're gonna see the gaps. You're gonna see the holes much more. It's almost like God, because God gives us the gift of heaven, because God gives us the beatific vision, because God gives us grace, we almost have like a holy perfectionism. We see what's missing, and for me at that time, that just became more and more clear, and I couldn't take it, man. It was like throughout my high school years, it was just painful, and yeah, throughout my life, since then, that's been a big ministry point for me, is helping people, go through healing and helping people kind of, yeah, have some relationship around, divorced parents, that kind of thing. Um, but what happened for me is it just escalated. Things in my family got worse and worse. Music career was getting better and better. Drugs and alcohol was getting worse and worse. And it culminated at the Shangri-La Music Festival in Harmony, Minnesota, in about 2010. And I had kind of gone through a little bit of a secular conversion at that point, where I just felt like, okay, I really need to start getting my life together. It's not just about it. It wasn't about holiness. It wasn't about repentance at that point. It was
Yeah.
just, I need to start waking up at a normal hour. What do I want to actually do with my life?
Oh, it sounds like, yeah, just Peterson talking about the cleaning up your room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start there, and then we can get into where that leads later. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it was mainly with the drugs, and the alcohol. It was just realizing that things are getting out of control. There was one point I remember this. I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, I think I got to stop drinking. And he goes, "What's going on? Like, are you okay?" And I said, "I'm fine. But when I look back and I look at the top 10, 20, 50, 100 things that I regret from, my very young life so far."
Yeah.
Looking back as a 33-year-old, I'm like, man, I was 19 at the time or whatever. Um, it was all because of alcohol, those mistakes that I had made and all the things that had happened. And I just knew that I needed to cut things, and what happened is I went to the music festival, and mind you, so I had been sober for a bit, and I went to this music festival and I thought, okay, well, I'm at this music festival. We've got 2 gigs, 2 nights in a row. I'll have a few drinks, see what happens. And basically what happened is, I ended up doing a bunch of cocaine that night. And I that was a drug that I had never been into. That was a drug that I never had even seen, actually. And for whatever reason, I did a lot of it that night. And I remember walking from one place to the next in the middle of the night, and I heard this voice. I heard this. It wasn't like I heard a voice, but it was like I felt a voice, and that voice imprinted in my heart, and it was just, "David, where are you?" Those were the words that came to mind. And I've never felt so loved in my life. It was unreal. It was like God had God had opened up something. God had like reached out and plucked me out of this abyss, because this music festival, it's crazy. Anything anybody tells you about the music industry as far as it being corrupt and dark and all that kind of stuff, it's much, much worse than it seems from the outside. And I ran out of the music festival. I said, I got to get out of here. And I went out and sat by this lake, and I just let it all out. And one of the biggest things that came up was that it was like God's way of saying, like, this isn't all your fault. This is not all your fault. you wouldn't have done this if you weren't running from something, weren't running from the pain, running from the problems, all this stuff. And yeah, it was hugely transformative. And yeah, I sat out there until the sun came up, and basically made a commitment to pray every day for the rest of my life that day. And that changed everything for me.
So I'm assuming that was after your sets that you ended up
I was in between the two sets,
in
actually. So
between the two sets. You had to get back up and,
I had to go do another show the next night. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
But it was all right.
So, okay, you have that fantastic experience. When you get home, were there calls to friends, calls to family, talking about it, or did you kind of keep that to yourself? You were just going to walk this new path by yourself, in a sense.
That's a good question. I don't really remember, honestly. I think I kept it to myself more or less, but I led a pretty, gosh, my life was absorbed in music completely. So I rented an apartment, excuse me, and had my recording studio set up in the basement there. Didn't go to college, didn't live at home, anything like that. So, yeah, there wasn't anybody really to tell right off the bat. But I think I sat on it for a little while. Yeah. And I think within the month, my family was kind of aware of what was going on.
How about the band? How did that all play out?
That was, yeah, the band. I always told people I was the only member of my band that knew all the songs all the way through. We were very much, musically, we were very
Gifted,
talented.
I'm sure. Yeah, but if you can be a little bit spontaneous in the middle of a song, or
Yeah,
miss some lyrics, miss some notes, and just, yeah.
things can be loose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So did
So
you do that for a few more years, or how long did you stay with music?
that would have been about 2 more years. Yeah, I was with that band.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, things definitely changed. And I think there was kind of a consensus among the band. My older brother was I think he had 2 children at that time. He stayed very clean. But he was feeling the same thing. He was thinking, we need to get into places that are a little bit more family friendly. Let's start playing at outdoor music festivals that are during the day. Let's kind of move away from the bar scene, that kind of thing. So the band went on for a couple more years, but yeah, I went through this big conversion, and I felt called to, give everything. My conversion was like a series of steps. It was that transformative moment where I felt like God plucked me out of the dark. And then it was making that commitment to pray every day. And then it was going and praying every day. And then it was getting invited to the Newman Center, and getting involved with people my own age in their faith. And then it was discerning, it was all of a sudden like, man, I don't want to do anything but share the gospel with people. I don't want to do anything. Like music doesn't matter anymore. Art doesn't matter anymore. Career, I don't care. I just want to preach the gospel. I just want to bring people to Christ, and it's still that way for me. But at that time I was like, what can I do? What more can I give? I started praying liturgy of the hour, started playing the rosary, just, having people over and praying with them, and just trying to do more and more and more. And I remember I started a little organic tomato farm project with on my parents' land. And I was out in the field tending the tomatoes, and it's all very like biblical analogy. It's like a tomato field is very much like a vineyard, and I'm out there kind of working in the vineyard. And I remember just kind of having that same sensation of like almost like a voice, calling, just saying, would you be willing to give everything? And I thought, I think I know what that means. I think I need to go to the seminary.
Wow.
And at first I was like, I really want to be a Franciscan, a CFR, because Father Agostino is one of my heroes. He was going up and down the streets of Harlem, making up poetry and just preaching to anybody that he ran into on the
No
street.
kidding. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, Father Augustine was great. But yeah, so I went out to New York and discerned with them, and quickly realized that's not where God wanted me. It's where I wanted to go, but that's not where God wanted me. God wanted me in the good old Diocese of Winona, Rochester, which is the southern strip of Minnesota. Now the home to Bishop Robert Barron, which is crazy. It's such a random turn of
Yeah,
events.
it is a random place to end up. Yeah.
But yeah, so joining seminary is where things yeah, really took root, and
And you
that's what
said, did you say earlier it was 8 years in
8 years.
seminary? So how did that, I guess if you can detail a little bit of that, those 8 years, and then discerning, I guess, out of it,
Yeah,
how that all happened.
yeah, it was a wild journey, but I knew I needed to go to seminary, and I went there, and so Diocese of Winona has their own seminary, and so it's in Winona, and it's called Immaculate Heart of Mary, one of the most beautiful seminaries I think I've ever been to. Just spiritually, it's just a very, very great place, and I think a lot of it is that the men that come there are generally from rural dioceses, and so
Okay.
there's a lot of joy, and it's just a very special place, very, very good place. And yeah, we played a lot of hockey and did a lot of praying. Um, but yeah, I was convinced that I was going to be a priest. We did 4 years in Winona, got the degree in philosophy and studied Spanish, and then we went out to Detroit. At that time, the Diocese of Winona sent the seminaries to Detroit for theological studies. Went out there, did 2 years there, and then a pastoral year in western Minnesota in a small town called Adrian. And yeah, I came back for my third year of theology, and that's the year that you prepare for the diaconate, right? And you're required to do a diaconate retreat, right? Before you're ordained as a deacon. And I went on my retreat in Corpus Christi, Texas, and it was an 8-day silent retreat. And that retreat, yeah, was just once again very transformative. It was after a few days, I just thought, man, something is very off. Something is not right in where I am and where I'm going. You know, it's not me like I thought. And I had been feeling that the few years before that. It felt a bit like yeah, it just felt like I was in the wrong place.
Hmm.
Like it was good, and there was a good, like the formation was amazing, and I use it every day. But there was just this sense of me personally, the David Adam Kruse, like the full story of me
Hmm.
was not sparking there, and I didn't know what that meant because I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave. To this day, I mean, most of my best friends are priests, and Diocese of Winona, Rochester will always be a very, very special place for me. And I love dearly the people that I know there and the people that I met there. But I knew that God was calling me out. And that was about 10 times harder to do. Leaving was about 10 times harder to do than joining seminary.
So how, I guess, what was the official, do you remember the day? And what that felt like to actually say, I'm officially done? And then what do you do on day one? You say, okay, God, please show me. I just spent 8 years in the seminary.
Yeah, that was a crazy transition. It was, uh, I didn't want to leave at first, and I didn't know what happened on that retreat. So I talked to my vocations director, and he said, get a priest, a couple friends that you know and trust. Tell them what happened, and see what they say.
Hmm.
Because like I told my vocation director, I said I don't want to like freak you out because I just don't know what happened down there. I don't want to show up and say, listen, man, I'm not sure if I can do this.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was like, well, I still want to be ordained, but that was something happened there. And it really took about 6 months to leave. And in the meantime, I was blessed with two things. The JP2 Healing Center program for priests and seminarians, which was really transformative for me. It was very, very powerful. The second blessing that happened during that time was the massive COVID lockdown. So I got back from that retreat, went back to Detroit, and then soon after that, we were evacuated
Oh,
back to
wow.
Minnesota. So I was actually in Minnesota and living with a religious order, finishing out the semester online, and I had a lot of time to really sit in the quiet and in the lockdown and think about everything. And yeah, it was good. It was good. But yeah, day one of actually leaving would have been August 1st, 2020.
Wow.
I moved in with a friend of mine and I started doing leather work in his garage. That's what happened.
Immediately.
Well, I had so many orders, actually. That's partly how the business started. Was I actually just needed to get orders done because I had probably 10 people that asked me to make them stuff, and
Wow.
people kept on asking. It was like almost every day. I think I had somebody ask me if I could make something for them. I actually had to take a break from applying for jobs a few weeks after that because I had so many leather orders, and that was the turning point.
Yeah, that's clearly a blessing, a third blessing there. How'd you come up with the brand name, the logo? How did that all come about?
Yeah. In seminary, you just develop a weird sense of humor. I think there's like it's like a family. It's like a bunch of brothers, And I just thought it was funny. Orémoose, means let us pray in
Yeah.
Latin. Of mooses because they kneel when they eat. So I thought that's very Catholic. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it started.
That's good.
And when I started the company, I was like, "Oh, Orémoose works," So
Well,
yeah,
there it
well,
is. Yeah. So over the past few years, coming out of COVID, and you had all these orders, you're launching the business. You obviously have a chance, as you mentioned earlier, a chance to reflect on all of those blessings and all of the, I guess, valleys that were part of your life. Do you see how God was working through all of it? I mean, even back to when you first saw that things were going downhill when you were, even before you were a teenager. Do you often think about that and see how he was weaving things together?
yeah, very, very often. And I don't think there's anything that could happen to me at this point in my life that would cause me to lose trust in God's ability to bring goodness out of it, you know. And yeah, I look back at just all of the stuff. Um, it just has shaped me. It's shaped my ministry. You know, I do Orémoose, but I actually work full time for the Archdiocese of Brisbane, doing evangelization. So that's
Okay.
really what I spend the majority of my time doing. And my wife and I both work there, and yeah, we run a healing Bible study. We do a lot of ministry for artists, um, and yeah, just connecting with people and sharing the gospel really is
How
the core.
fantastic. How fantastic. So what does that look like to lead evangelization efforts? Can you just give me a little bit of um,
Oh man,
more?
means all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
we do a lot of writing, a lot of events, a lot of talks. Man, if I could, like, I'm not privy to be able to direct the department that I work
Uh-huh.
for, the team that I
Yeah.
work for. So I'm somewhat subject to, kind of the strategic plan of our department. Um, but we do a lot of events, we do a lot of resources, we do a lot of retreats, things like that. But man, if I could, I just think right now one of the biggest things that's needed is preaching, is getting out there and preaching. Not preaching, banging people on the head with the catechism. It's helpful sometimes, but getting out there and just really speaking the good news. We have this dichotomy that happens so often where people are like, either they're too afraid to share the gospel because they don't want to come across, as like offensive or whatever, or they share it, but they share it in a way that's like, well, you either take it or leave it, and it's kind of like, well, that's not how you tell somebody good news. Take it or leave it. If it's good news, they shouldn't have to take it or leave it. They should want to take it, and I just firmly believe, that it's totally possible. And I feel like you say, like looking back at the story, my story in particular, I feel like at this point in my life, there's nothing that makes me doubt the good news. There's nothing that wavers. That I get it. I get why even the hard sayings of Jesus, the hard things in the Bible, teachings of the church, the wordings in the catechism, things like that, it's all good. It's part of God's design. It's good. And I just think getting out there and sharing that message as much as possible is what's needed right now, especially with this cancel culture. You say one thing and just cancel me right away. Cancel me before I even get started. Like, let's just get that out of the way. You know what I mean?
I'm canceled. Yeah, exactly. That's good. So when you're doing this, I'm just curious, do you come across, do you have to do a lot of apologetics? Do you have to defend? Because when people say good news, right, you're staying within a very, I guess, positive space. Are you getting pushback to a point that's pushing back on Catholicism specifically? Do you have to deal with that on a regular basis? Because I know you're doing it for the diocese, right? So you're dealing with, you're with active Catholics, but I'm sure in the other areas where you are that you've dealt with people that are not fond of the faith. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, even in the church, even in surprised at how much opposition to church teaching, people have. And there's a bit of a cultural difference. This is Australia. Australia is a very, very secular culture. Oftentimes when I talk to friends from back in the States, I say, you'd be surprised how good of shape the church is in America, especially right now. You have people like Bishop Barron and Father Mike and Jeff Cavins and all these people going around doing these things where they're presenting the faith in a way that's actually really beautiful and really appealing. And what that does is it creates a culture of acceptance of the church, acceptance of the gospel. Here that's not as strong. Here there's a lot more. I'm Catholic, but I want to change this, and this.
Yeah.
And that very much is in the church as well. So we encounter all kinds of resistance. Get hate mail. There's all kinds of things, but it's worth it. And like tomorrow morning we're doing a big event. We sold out. Actually, we started this event for like millennials, basically like 25 to 45, because that age group is so like the 13th story of a hotel, like they just get kind of skipped in the evangelization world sometimes. And so we got this place that's a restaurant where there's like a play place where there's like a playground built into it, so the parents can like let their kids go play, but they can eat and just still watch their kids and that kind of thing. So we have caretakers who are going to take care of the kids. We have about 30 kids coming, and then about 60 adults who are coming, and they'll be able to actually hang out, listen to some input, listen to a talk.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good things happening too. Yeah. It's coming along.
Well, cool. Thank you for being willing to share that about some of the dark times in your life, and thank you for being willing to step out what you're doing for evangelization, and obviously what you're doing with Orémoose. It's really fantastic, the zeal that you have. And I see this in a lot of people these days, young and old. And it's pretty cool to see. Is there anything you want to end with, add to the conversation? Anything at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks for having me for one thing, you know. I think one thing I'm a firm believer in is that we should never take for granted the opportunity to share the gospel, you know, share the gospel and share our testimonies, you know, like in Revelation, you know,
Yeah.
the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony, right? Like those two things, the blood of the lamb, like the life of Jesus Christ flowing into the veins and ventricles of the world, you know, through the sacraments and through the church. But the word of our testimony too, you know, it's our witness. It's the practical, you know, it's where the transformation happened, and it's coming from, you know, one person to another, heart to heart, you know. Man, I guess anybody that's listening, like, I guess I would just want to say, you know, if if Jesus is who he says he is, and if you read those gospels and anything that he says is true, then there's nothing more important than figuring out how we can get his message to every single person that we encounter, every single person we see, every single person that we know. There's nothing more important than that, you know? And it's so easy. It's so easy for that to be like number 18 on the priorities list. You know, I'll do that when I've got that, you know, that half an hour after mass on Sunday. You
Yeah.
know, if this is the word of God, and if this is Jesus, the Son of God, and if what he is saying is true, that's got to be number one. It's got to be number one, because the salvation of one soul is more valuable than anything we could possibly achieve in this life.
Well said. Well
And just
said.
anybody out there that, you know, if you're even just think about it, just go for it. Just do it. There's no time to lose, and you won't regret it. You won't regret it. Just getting into it, doing the work.
I interviewed a gentleman, Austin Havish. You should look up that episode, probably, I don't know, 10 to 15 episodes ago. He does sent evangelization, door-to-door evangelization in the Denver area. And it's absolutely fantastic. And what I see in him, I see in you. And I think you guys are on the same age. But anyway, it's back to that same zeal where it's like, guys, what are we doing? We're all perishing.
Yeah.
Go, 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 go. Speak.
Okay.
Don't worry about being perfect. Speak. So very good. Very good. David, thanks again. I'll add some links to your shop and things related to the business. And if anyone, I invite you, I implore you, visit his site. The craftsmanship is impeccable. So anyway, subscribe, share, etc. Until next time, take care and God bless. Bye.